Start is kind of a funny story that happened when I was coming onto the elder board. And this was about 2 years ago, and Mike and all the other elders at the time had me over at Mike's place to interview me to see if I would be a good candidate to serve here at Church of Hope. And this story just fits too well into kind of what I do for work and I guess who the Lord has shaped me into being. But Dave Lindahl, who was an elder at the time, as they asked their many questions, and it got towards the end, and things were, in my mind, I was looking pretty good. I was thinking, hey, thought I answered some of those well. And Dave looks at me and he says, "Lucas, I like you. I like that you smell like the sheep." And he paused, and I'm kind of like, okay, he's going to fill me in here. Nothing. So I'm like, "I smell like the sheep." And I was like, "Dave, you're going to have to fill me in here." He goes, "I like that you smell like the sheep. You're a part of the flock, that you're actively with those around you, and that helps you serve them." And I said, "Well, I guess it's good that I smell like the sheep, right? I'm trying to I got two things here. Either it's good or it's bad." And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, this is good. When it started out, not looking so good. And that's one of the reasons where I want to start, is that was part of me being on the elder board here at Church of Hope. But not only that, that's kind of where I want to start with what I do for work and kind of who I am, so you can kind of get to know maybe who I am now, and then we'll go backwards. But what I do for work, so I manage a hobby farm in Nowthen for a couple different families, and I do all sorts of different things. And actually, praise God, some of the people are here, which is really, really fun to see. And one of those things is I actually shepherd sheep at the farm I manage. So there's different days where I come home and I literally smell like sheep. And that is the role that God has placed me in. And I love it. I truly love it. So whether I'm here attempting to smell like sheep or literally at work smelling like sheep, that's where the Lord has me. But I do all sorts of other stuff for work as well. I do a lot of different things with trees, kind of all sorts of stuff from tree removals to firewood. And that's sort of the next section that kind of hit me hard this week. Is the beginning of my testimony is that on Sunday mornings I was sort of a check-the-box type of Christian. And you might find yourself in that category this morning, where you might come this morning to church because you're asked to be here by somebody else and you get favor from them when you're here, and oh yeah, Mom will think that's great, or yeah, Dad will be excited for me, or yeah, then Grandma and Grandpa will have us over afterwards. And that's sort of my Sunday mornings kind of growing up. I truly enjoyed youth group and all the different missions trips, but I was sort of a check-the-box type of Christian. And it hit me really hard this week as to how horrible a check-the-box type mentality in anything is. And one of those analogies I had is, I have a bunch of different random equipment, and one of those things is a articulating wheel loader, and it kind of operates with a forklift, and it maneuvers around so it doesn't tear up grass. And I was just driving around moving logs, just a very blue-collar thing to do. And I was moving around doing short things, and I have an Apple Watch, which is, I guess that's a topic for a different time. But anyways, my Apple Watch asked me, it said, "Are you working out?" And I could check the box. And I'm in the machine doing essentially nothing. I'm doing this, which I love doing, and I'm not working. That's the point. And I had the option to check the box. And part of me was like, man, I should check the box and see how many calories I burned as I'm just sitting here in my machine. And I kind of laughed and thought, man, that's the exact thing that we do when we go to church, just to check the box. We come and sit in the chair and kind of check out and don't really pay attention, and then, oh yeah, I have a conversation with 3 or 4 people that I know about work or about the weather or about how the Wild lost, and they lose every single time that they're in the playoffs, and it's really brutal. But the point is that we come on Sunday mornings for way more than that. And I've experienced that transformation, and it really hit me hard this week as I was able to check the box. And I kind of wish I would have, so I could have seen how many calories I would have burned, but I kind of laughed and dismissed it. So so more about who I am. I grew up here in Nowthen in a Christian home with 2 loving parents, 3 brothers, and a foster sister. My mom was strong in her faith, and it was with her that I accepted Jesus into my life at 5 years old. That's my testimony, and I'm going to be done. No. I wish that's where I could end. I truly wish that was my testimony, and I'm sort of in a way jealous for people that have been faithful throughout their whole career, if you will, as a disciple of Christ. But it's a good thing I labeled all this. I have a lot more to my story than just that. So, like I said, I was about 5 years old when I accepted Jesus in my heart, and my family has been at Church of Hope since the beginning, since 2006. My wife, Rebecca, and I went to youth group here together, but I'll get back to that topic at the end. That's the exciting part. Growing up, I looked forward to going to youth group, like I said, but I didn't always want to go to church on Sunday mornings. I said my dad was a very nice and generous father, but he always seemed to be more focused on being productive than making church a priority. He had a job where he was working quite a bit on the weekends. Growing up, my dad also enjoyed drinking alcohol, and I saw him affected by alcohol weekly, and it didn't seem to be a big deal. It was sort of normal. Missions trips were great for me, and I truly remember multiple trips where my walk with the Lord was closer during those experiences. And actually, the shirt I'm wearing, which I'll kind of get back to, is a missions trip that we went on with the youth group and Kyle and Julie, not very long before kind of the climax, if you will, of my testimony, or the pivoting point. In high school, I enjoyed sports and played soccer and golf. And golf was definitely my favorite, and one that I guess I like to think I excelled at, but we'll get back to that as well. My junior year of high school, I received a golf scholarship to a Christian university in California. I wrote in here, talk about how bad I was at golf, which that sounds funny to say. I got a scholarship to play golf at a college, but when I got there, I ended up not playing that much because the team was way better than I was. And the Lord used that experience for me to get where He wanted me to be, and then be in that place, even though I might have not been required to actually be there. And as Thomas knows, golf kind of comes and goes, and golf I wasn't that good at in college. I like to think I was really good in college, but the caliber of golfers in Minnesota compared to California is just not the same. So the Lord kind of had other plans for me as I was at college and serving in different ways within the golf team and being sort of more of a mentor in ways and different things. In college is where I experienced worldly freedom. And worldly freedom is a substantially different thing than the freedom that I feel now. I had never experienced having no one really care what I did or didn't do until I moved out to college in California. It was during these few years that I explored the slippery slope of what alcohol does to you. I had never got caught or in trouble for drinking, so I didn't really think it was that bad, and most of my other friends felt the same way. My college was great. We had chapel 3 days a week, and we would start class with prayer. I truly enjoyed prayer and chapel and growing in my faith, but I didn't know how true that can be, and I also lived for times of getting drunk out on the boat or the golf course or fill in the blank of the other activities that we did, and just walked the line so we wouldn't get in trouble in college. And when I say we, it was me and a few other friends, but I would say I was the instigator most of the time. I graduated college in 4 years and got my business degree, but I think the most important thing I learned in college is that I didn't want to work at a desk. I just really enjoyed being outside. After graduation, I moved back to Minnesota for the summer, but then I moved out to Montana to live with my oldest brother and my sister-in-law. It was during this time that I made a very poor decision that changed my life forever. So Bozeman, Montana is where I moved out to. I was there for a couple weeks, and I didn't have any friends. I didn't really meet anybody. But I was out fishing one day, ice fishing, and I met this other kid. I'd say we were about 22 years old. So this all took place about 8-9 years ago. And Ben was his name. Ben was a friend I made ice fishing, and he was literally me. He was just me and a different person. We were the same person pretty much. He was from Willmar, Minnesota, and he had just moved out to Montana to experience all the same things I did. And like I said, he was the same person I was. It was really, really crazy. And how I met him was actually funny as well. I was just going up by myself ice fishing, and he was also doing the same, but he was already there. We obviously hadn't met each other yet. And I had a hand ice auger. I'm not sure if we got too many ice fisher men in here, or women, I guess. And they're not very common anymore. You don't see many people out there using a hand auger. And I didn't know there was like 2+ feet of ice. So I'm out there trying to drill my hole, and I think I'd used it for drilling holes for planting trees the year before, so the blades are really dull, and it was brutal. I got like one hole, and I was toast. And Ben came over, and he had a power auger, which that's a thing to have if you have a hand auger. So he couldn't watch me. He said, hey, I was like 100 yards away, fishing, and I saw you with that hand auger. I just can't watch that. So he came over and drilled me some holes. And classic, where are you from, where you been? And he pretty much just said, well, you just come over and fish with me because we need to talk more about all the things that we like to do. So from that day forward until the accident, Ben and I hung out every single day. We did pretty much everything together. And it was a really neat experience. And in a way, it was sort of a God thing to have somebody that I could connect with. But unfortunately, we were sort of the same person when it came to alcohol as well. And that instigated certain things that led to the accident. So beer was present in just about everything we did. It was in moderation for the most part. So getting to the accident, my story revolves around a very poor decision, a very poor process of decisions that led to this climax. So on May 17th, 2017, Ben had two friends named Morgan and Erica that came into town from Indiana. Ben had met Morgan and Erica in North Dakota the summer before at a camp. I think it was actually a Christian camp where they were serving in different ways, and that was pretty much it. They made the connection. They got social media friends, and then a year later, Morgan had reached out to Ben saying, hey, I got a job at one of the big ranches down in Yellowstone, and I'm going to be moving there to be a receptionist, and I'm flying out. Is there any chance you could pick us up from the airport and, show us around for a day or two? We're in a hotel, and then I'm going to where I'm going to be working. And her friend Erica was then going to fly out. She's only going to be there for about 3 days. And Ben said, yeah, that would be great. And I have another friend that's attached to my hip, and he's going to come along as well. And that was me. So they came out on May 17th, and they're from Indiana, and they wanted to see Bozeman. The four of us went out for dinner at a brewery, and then we went sightseeing up in the mountains. The weather was forecasted for rain, but ended up being a snowstorm. We still decided to drive up Rocky Mountain Road so we could see back on the valley. We also had a case of beer in the SUV and were drinking as we were driving. This is something we didn't normally do, but it only takes that one time for something to go very wrong very quickly. So I was driving my SUV out of Tahoe on a dirt road that leads up to the mountains. And as we gained in elevations, the conditions in the weather went from light snow to very heavy snow and low visibility. And if you want to put the first slide up there, there's sort of a picture of actually that's where the accident happened, and that was like a year later, but it was about the same conditions. And this was in May, so it was really heavy, wet snow. And before I lead into all the different aspects of the actual accident, I want to read Psalm 23. I want to read about God's kindness, as Mike just shared. So Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths. For his namesake, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. What I'm about to share is God's rod comforting me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and your love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So what does God's rod look like? Jason Ruzick likes to talk about this often, and he just shared with me before we started that this is his life's verse, and I think I'm just going to join him in that the Lord using his rod to comfort us, to get us back on the path, to keep us within his boundaries is a beautiful thing. And earlier I talked about how I had worldly freedom to do whatever I wanted, compared to God's rod that brings us into having freedom in Christ, where we can operate in any way we want within truth and know that we are forgiven, that we are fully secure in him. So back to the accident. So we're driving up the mountain, if you will, and we came to a downhill right-hand bend, and as I tried to make the turn, the tires slid off the road and caught some rocks, and the SUV rolled. We were not going very fast when we rolled, and it seemed that everything happened in slow motion. But when we came to a stop, only three of the four of us were still in the vehicle. We found Morgan back towards the road from the car. She was in the back seat behind me, and unfortunately she wasn't wearing her seatbelt. And Ben was also in the back seat, and he wasn't wearing his seatbelt as well. Erica was in the front seat, who the two of us were wearing our seatbelts. Wear your seatbelt. When we ran over to her, we tried CPR, and we called 911. But it was obvious Morgan had already passed away. We found out later that when the vehicle rolled, my friend was partially ejected because the window broke, and she wasn't wearing her seatbelt, and the car rolled over her, and she was instantly killed. A helicopter was sent to find us and get us, but the conditions were too bad, and it was turned around. It was over an hour before the ambulance and the first responders made it to us. During what felt like forever, I made the decision that I would tell the truth and face the consequences, no matter what. There were beer cans all over the car. And I mean all over. When we rolled, you couldn't paint a worse picture to come up on. I mean, there's beer cans inside of the car, outside of the car. There was cans that were open, so it just smelled bad. And my friend Ben had the reaction that I think kind of anyone would, and I guess I praise God that I didn't, but he just felt, he's like, man, we got to clean this up. This looks terrible. So he started collecting all the beer cans he could and dumping them out and putting them all in a bag, and then kind of walked off to hide the bag, if you will. And I remember saying, we can't do that. We need to just leave everything as is so they can truly see what happened. And I need to face whatever that is. So it took a while before the ambulance, like I said, got to us, and before we got back down into town. It was like 3 a.m. by this time. But back in town, the three of us were brought to the hospital to be checked for our injuries, which were all very minor, praise God. But while in the hospital, a police officer came in and asked if I was the one driving. I replied yes, and he handcuffed me to the hospital bed. Once I was cleared by the nurse, the officer took me to the jail. I was put in a cell for a few hours, and then I was asked to share what happened to a detective. Once again, praise God that he raised me up in the church knowing that truth matters, and that it really, really helps right the ship. So there's like a 3-hour conversation that I have with this detective that they actually gave me, my lawyers gave me after, and I have it on I actually have it in my music on my phone, and if I hit shuffle, very randomly, one of those 1,000 songs on my phone will actually be this recording, which is like 3 hours long of exactly what happened, and me just sharing. And not to pat myself on the back, but to just share how truth matters. Later on in this story, the detective shared that everything I shared was a fact, down to every turn we made, how many beer cans were in the car, lining up with how many beers I had drank and my blood alcohol content, and the timing of everything. And that really affected some of the judge's decisions to be able to really be where I am here today. So, tell the truth. So after I shared with the detective, I was put back in the jail cell, and then 2 public defendants came and met with me. And the first one just told me pretty much what was going to happen cut and dry. He said, this is an easy case. It's cut and dry. You'll get minimum 10 years in prison, so just face it, and that's reality. And I remember saying, this is so brutal. I'm still in my clothes that are soaking wet, and it was 30 degrees, and when can I go home? Just asking kind of the questions that a 22-year-old is just trying to find some comfort. And he was just really blunt, which I sort of appreciated because that was the reality. There was a second public defendant, and her name was Diane, and her goal was just to try and get me back home until the sentencing happened, which ended up being like a year later. And at the time, that didn't look like it was a very optimistic thing. But that was her goal, which was great, and I really appreciated that. So I was put back in the jail cell, and I was freezing physically, and I guess the reason I share that is they didn't have me change into a jail outfit, which is obviously not normal normally when you get checked into the jail, but the public defendants suggested I not, because when I get my mugshot, I would look more like a civilian than a convict, if they will, or however they put it. And so they said, you just got to bear through it. And I remember it literally being like just physically freezing and trying to navigate the emotions. And actually, so I was put back in the jail cell, and I just knew what I need is a Bible. I know I need to be able to find truth because I have no compass right now. I have no idea what's going on. And I don't remember if it's from watching too much detective shows of people in jail, but I knew that it was one of my rights to be able to have a Bible. And I remember going up to the receptionist saying, hey, or asking them through the jail cell, hey, I need a Bible. And they kind of laughed and said, we don't even know where one is. I said, well, I'm pretty sure that I'm required to be able to have one. And they found one for me, and I was given it, which I praise God for. And I remember sitting on it's just a concrete bench in my cell, and opening up the Bible and saying, okay, Lord, here I am. I'm nothing. Like, literally, I'm nothing. I'm soaking wet. I have looking like 10 years in prison. I've just not even sure what just happened. I think my friend just passed away. We're pretty positive, but we're not. And what does that mean for their family? And I don't even know her family. I knew her for a half a day. And I just said, show me what's next. Show me something. And I opened up my Bible, and I opened right to Isaiah 40. And if you know anything about Isaiah 40 or 41, 42, or 43, they're extremely powerful chapters talking about how the people of God prosper. And I remember thinking, I'm going to read Isaiah 40, 28 through 31. Even youths grow. This is right where I opened up to when I was in that jail cell. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. I remember reading that and thinking, man, that's great for somebody else. That'd be really encouraging for anybody but me. And thinking, Lord, why on earth are you here? I was hoping to open up to Paul getting broken out of jail and going to the next thing, and I'm still on this other mindset. And I just had this overwhelming sense from the Lord that He was going to help me through this. What that looked like, I have no idea. But I am here and fully submissive to whatever the next step looks like, whatever the next days look like, whatever the next 10 years might look like, as it looked like at that time. In sometime this week, I would really encourage you to read those 4 chapters, Isaiah 40 through 43, and try and place yourself in my shoes that night, and just see the power of those chapters and what some of that stuff says. And it's hard for me to even read some of that stuff because it's just so powerful and so applicable to my situation. So the first answered prayers, the bail judge agreed that the best place for me was back home in Minnesota with my family and my church as I waited my sentencing. And that was something that was not probable. If you want to go to the next slide. So that was my mugshot in jail. And it's kind of hard to tell, but I'm actually wearing the same shirt right now as I'm wearing in that picture. The night of the accident, I was wearing this Ecuador shirt from our missions trip that I went on with Kyle and Julie and my brother Jared and about a dozen other people from Church of Hope. And it was an awesome, I'm very grateful that they didn't have me change clothes as freezing as I was, because there was multiple different times where the Bible verse right here on the front drew attention to more than just me. And there's too much detail there for me to go into it right now, but I'm very grateful for this shirt. So to fast forward, I was able to be released from jail on bail, and my parents drove out to Montana to pick me up and figure out what had just happened and what's next. So my parents drove out to Montana on a Saturday, and the next morning I had a strong desire to go to church. And this was something that was very tricky because my face in the story was all over the news. I mean, you turn on the news and it was video recording of the ambulances and the police officers and the hospital and somebody that had passed away, and them still trying to figure out details. So this was sort of an ongoing story, and it was, I mean, Bozeman isn't that big of a town. It's maybe the size of Elk River, and it's the biggest town for 100 miles around. So this is a big story. And I remember thinking, is this wise to go to church and show my face? And I just knew that I had to go. And I'm so grateful that we did. It was an amazing experience to get prayed for. And one other thing that happened that I have to share is the offering. They took offering at church, and I remember just being drawn to open my wallet. And at the time, I had no money. I was just graduated from college, trying to figure out what I'm going to do for work and kind of making things meet in different ways and driving for Uber and different things. And I opened my wallet, and I had $120 cash. And I grabbed that, and I put it all in the basket. And I prayed, Lord, this is me all in spiritually and physically. And I didn't think a lot of it after that, but I'll get back to that $120 at the end. So after church, my parents and I left and headed home to Nowthen. When I got home, Pastor Mike was there waiting for me. He was waiting for me to disciple me, which was a God thing in itself. Pastor Mike was the lead pastor of Church of Hope for 3 months at this point. Before that, we had a phenomenal pastor in Tim Elrod, but he was part-time. And stuff like this is not something a part-time pastor can be fully devoted to. Church of Hope was my teen challenge. A lot of people go through different circumstances, and there's different amazing organizations like Teen Challenge that are very resourceful. But Church of Hope was that for me. Pastor Mike, Kyle and Julie Swenson, Andy Miller, Seth Mills, Ryan Portman, Jason Ruzick, Jason Negus, and so many more were my support team. One of those things being is I lost my license like you would think I would for that entire year after the accident, and we had a Bible study every single Tuesday and Thursday morning, and one of those individuals would pick me up at 6 a.m. and drop me back off at my house at 8 a.m. twice a week. So during this time, I was trying to navigate what was next and still not having any idea what Morgan's family is going through. Is court ordered that I had to have no contact with anybody in the vehicle or any of their relatives. So it was a really, really tough time. On December 13th, so this is about 7 months later, I got this letter from Morgan's parents. John and Leanne Gaither wrote this letter to my prosecuting attorney, Erin Murphy, which represented the state of Minnesota, and it was her job to give me justice or try and present justice to the judge who would hand down justice. And they wrote this letter to her to have it forwarded to my attorney so they could give it to me. So this is Morgan's parents having still no idea of who I am. Aaron, thank you for taking time to consider our wishes. I know this case is not normal, and Lucas didn't want to start out his day planning for this to happen. We don't want him to be lumped into the same category as drug dealers, rapists, robbers, and other violent criminals. From what we read this evening, his actions on that night were out of character and a fluke. As we have stated previously, we do not want to compound this tragedy by pursuing a felony conviction against Lucas Johnson. This would cause only us to experience more grief than we are currently enduring. From the letters you forwarded to us, it is obvious he is suffering as we are. Our opinion is that incarceration or a felony conviction would not make him a better person or lessen our sorrow. We feel very strongly that participation with a group called MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, should be required. Getting out and talking to the community would be appropriate. If the loss of Morgan can be used as an example to prevent just one untimely death, then there can be a positive outcome to such a devastating event. As a result of this incident, the world has already lost a great young person. We would like Lucas to have a second chance at life and be given the opportunity to excel to his fullest potential. We know this is what Morgan would have wanted. Sincerely, John and Leanne Gaither. I was able to reply through my lawyers with this letter, which is sort of a long letter, and it sort of describes where I was at, but the overwhelming citation of Church of Hope is too overwhelming to not share. It's in an entirety, because if you were part of church at this time, you had a hand in my trajectory as Christ shaped me in that time. And I'll just read it. Gaither family, I've tried countless times to share this letter, to start this letter, and I still cannot find the right words, and I don't think the right words exist. Sorry, 5 letters that don't mean enough. I know sorry doesn't help, because when people heard what happened and told me sorry, it didn't help. The only thing that seemed to make any difference was positive, tangible acts people did with me, or positive, tangible acts I did myself. I do not mean to list these acts as a way to make myself sound better. I mention these acts in hope to give Morgan the credit for helping me change in a positive way. Tangible positives since the tragedy. Bible study. Every Tuesday morning since the accident, I've met with my senior pastor, Mike Bruckner. During this time from 6 to 8 a.m., he has helped me cope with this indescribable tragedy. Here is what I was able to unpack, and here is where I have been able to unpack my continual struggle and wishing and praying it was me that passed away in the accident instead of Morgan. These Tuesday mornings have been and will continue to be a vital part in my life to continue to try to become the best person I can for my community, my church, my family, and my future wife. There hasn't been a single Tuesday morning that Morgan and the Gaither family hasn't been thought of and prayed for out loud. My family. This tragedy has brought my family around me in a way that I cannot describe. Our family is closer than we have ever been. Also, my extended family, my church community, my friends have rallied together in prayer for the Gaither family. The Church of Hope Youth Group. Every Wednesday night, I serve at our youth group by being a youth leader, running the games, and also hosting small group. In the small group, I help to answer questions and instill biblical core values to encourage and support our youth to make better decisions as they battle the struggles of the day-to-day of life. After my sentencing, I plan to share mine and Morgan's testimony. Before that time, I couldn't share it legally. To our youth group, to instill the consequences of drinking and driving and being open and willing to talk to anyone who is willing to listen about the struggles with these issues. Youth group retreat to Big Sandy Camp. I just joined our youth pastor Kyle and our youth group as we took our youth group to Christian Bible Camp for a long weekend of encouraging talks, sports, worship, games, ice fishing, and sport and fellowship in the Word. Attending Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge at their Buffalo campus were 25 to 35 boys from ages 12 to 18 recovered. This is where I should have, this is the category of people where I should have been after the accident. With Church of Hope, the youth group, we serve the boys, providing worship and songs and a Bible-centered message followed by a small group discussion time. We then spend more time, with the boys by building relationships through basketball, disc golf, ping pong, and working out. I look forward to this second Thursday of every month to be able to serve in an area that is close to my heart. I also hope to share mine and Morgan's testimony at this organization. Since then, I think I've shared there 3 or 4 times, and it's been really neat. Walk on Water Retreat up in Baudette, Minnesota is hosted in January by our good friend Mark Yoakum. And Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, adults and youth, this event helps them struggling and recovering from drug abuse and alcohol. For this 4-day service retreat at our church, Pastor Mike with 2 elders of the church and I road trip up to and help 72 adults are struggling and recovering from substance abuse. This event is very close to my heart because I've always had a passion for ice fishing. And during this event, we help set up ice shanties, heaters, drill ice holes, and help the guys experience God's creation through ice fishing. I have on here, the temperature this year was negative 35 with wind chills, so that added an extra twist. The next one is Feed My Starving Children. That was an event that we went to with the church youth group, another great experience. The next one is the Church of Hope Community Easter Egg Hunt, VBS. And by going out into the community and inviting people door to door to share the good news of the gospel. The next one is personal reflection time. I've been given a lot of books and Bible verses since the tragedy and accident. I've set aside an hour of time each day to read these books and reflect on my life and how I can become a better person each day. I'm going to list the books that I was able to read because I encourage you to read these if you haven't already. The purpose-driven life. What is the gospel? The Bible. God made the country, man made the city. Have you considered? And the cast of characters. The last thing on here is a tricky thing to share, and it was a alcohol monitoring ankle bracelet. So if you might have known me then, or you can picture any sort of crime show, you might see somebody that's on house arrest, and they wear a big bracelet. That was me for about a year. I had an ankle bracelet on my leg that detected sweat through my body, and it took my GPS location. And this alcohol bracelet, if you will, vibrates every 30 minutes to take its reading and to notify you that it's still working. When this bracelet vibrates every 30 minutes, and this is what I wrote, this is a continuous reminder that I can't forget of the tragic event and how I can be better and promote the consequences of drinking and driving. In the beginning, the vibrations kept me up at night. And brought me to tears. But now it seems to be more of a reminder of how far I've come. Also, when people see it, they can't help but ask. And every time they ask, I get to share Morgan's testimony and my story. In conclusion to this letter to Morgan's family, I wrote, I cannot write this letter without talking about my faith in my Savior, Jesus Christ, and glorifying God for helping me through this trial and changing me into the man after his own heart. I was a Christian before the accident, but it wasn't until after when my faith really became real. I do not know if at this time, I didn't know if the Gaithers know Jesus, but after reading your positive letters towards my future, I cannot help but see your family's faith in Jesus Christ, showing me undeserving forgiveness and mercy, just as Jesus did for all of us on the cross. Thank you for promoting my second chance at life. I wrote, a new Lucas Johnson. So it was about a year from the accident until my sentencing. And my sentencing was a very pivotal day. There was a lot of different factors that seemed positive into pointing towards a good outcome, if you will. And for what I mean by that is a physical outcome of where I was going to go. Was I going to go to jail? Was I going to have to stay in Montana? That was all up to the judge. And the day before the sentencing, I got to meet the Gaithers family. I got to meet Morgan's parents and her brother. If you want to go to the next picture up there, as the train driving by shakes it, we will. This is their family, and I still regret not smiling in this picture. And I remember thinking, if we take a picture, I can't smile. There's no way that they would be smiling taking a picture with the person that caused their daughter to no longer be here. And as you see in that picture, they are all smiling, and that's just a testimony of who they are and what they did for me. So that day was a very interesting meeting. The day before my sentencing, all of the different lawyers involved, including the prosecuting attorney, Morgan's parents, Morgan's brother, my parents, met in a conference room at the lawyer's office. And the words truly cannot describe that meeting. All the lawyers were there, and the Gaither family shared of Morgan's plans in Montana on how she had been, she had a big going away party like 2 days before she had passed away. And there was a few people that, and they actually shared as parents that it was sort of strange that there was people there that shared like she felt like she was leaving forever. And that they were saying goodbye in a way that felt like she wasn't coming back, which is, I don't know how to really process that, and maybe I'll let you process that, but it seems like God works in different ways and before we even know what's going to happen. So during this meeting, it was very emotional. Even the lawyers kind of couldn't hold it together, and it was very unique to see a family that just showed love and forgiveness. And this meeting before my sentencing played a big role in what would happen the next day on the big day of my sentencing. So my sentencing was April 20th, 2017. What would the judge do? He wasn't there. He doesn't know who I am. He doesn't really know the situation. It's still all up to him. He could say, hey, this is great. I'm really glad that you're doing well. I'm glad that they think that you're doing well, but I have to serve justice. The whole town is mad about you doing this. I have to give you whatever he feels is just. That's the way our court system works, and that is just, is that the judge still decides. And we had a great enactment of that at the church VBS here with the just judge, which I couldn't help but overwhelmed with because it was a rerun of my courtroom, of my sentencing. So during this court sentencing, I wish there was video of the whole thing. Morgan's parents went on the defense in front of the judge on my behalf. The judge was taken away that when they came up to share, they went to the defense side compared to the prosecuting side for their daughter and for me. They shared a lot of what I had just shared, that they wanted grace and forgiveness. My mom also went on the stand and asked for the same thing. The judge was moved, and I have to help, or I have to share this. He shared, he kind of went off script. You could tell everything's formal and how he operates and what he's doing. But he paused and said, I can't help but share this testimony of my nephew. It was just like a year before this situation, his nephew moved from Minnesota to Montana and was in a drinking and driving accident, and his nephew's friend was the one that was driving, and his nephew passed away. And it was just the two of them. From this situation, both parents of the people in the vehicles wanted nothing but the worst punishment for each other. That more jail time, higher fines, more everything. And the judge shared that it absolutely destroyed both families. That from that hate, I actually think both. One, for sure, of the families of the parents as they were going through this got divorced in the process, and the individual that was the one driving ended up going to jail, and there was no good. The judge said there was no good that came from the situation, and it was brutal just as an uncle to be able to hear the outcome. So he shares all this, and he says, it is my joy, it is my honor to be able to see the exact opposite experience in this setting. And this is where all the things that we were hoping would happen sort of took place. And I actually have, which I'm going to read because it shares more of the legal aspect of things, but here's the front page of the newspaper in Bozeman, Montana, the day of or the day after my sentencing. And I guess you can see me on there, and my lawyer. And I'm going to read this, which was really neat because unfortunately there was a lot of different video cameras and news organizations that were there that wanted to paint the story of Lucas got justice. He's in jail, don't worry about him anymore. The community is safe, we can move on, and justice is served. People should notice this won't happen again because we really punished him. And it seemed like that was the story they were wanting to tell. And as this courtroom is not painting that story, you could kind of see, which is very unique, some of the cameras getting taken down. And that story wasn't happening. And this one reporter told the story truthfully. And there wasn't any news, it kind of just got swept under the rug from a news outlook after the fact, like on the Daily News. So this article is titled, Seeking Mercy, Finding Grace. And that's the reporter's wording. In a rare scene in the Gallatin County District Court, every person in the courtroom wanted the same outcome. Whether it was the family of 22-year-old Morgan Lee Gaither who was killed in a car accident on a dirt road on the north end of the county last year, or the family of 24-year-old Lucas Johnson, the driver in the crash who pleaded guilty to a felony negligent homicide, all asked Judge John Brown for one thing: mercy. We beg you for leniency, Morgan's mom asked. We just want Lucas to be able to go home and live his life to the fullest. Our hearts are already broken. Breaking the hearts of Lucas's parents would only add to our sorrow. Morgan's dad, John, during this testimony, his testimony said that this is what Morgan would have wanted: a plea agreement that both Gallatin County Deputy Attorney Aaron Murphy and the defense attorneys who pleaded guilty to the charge Friday asked for a deferred sentence that could be eventually removed from Lucas's record, and he could serve community service, emphasizing educating youths on drinking and driving. Brown agreed to having terms, giving Lucas Johnson a 3-year deferred sentence and 250 hours of community service. Johnson is allowed to transfer his supervision to Minnesota, where he lives with his family. Judge John Brown, you're getting a great chance here. I'm giving great weight to what the Gaither family wanted. Initially charged with vehicular homicide while under the influence, Johnson pleaded guilty to negligent homicide on Friday, admitting that he had been drinking on the night of May 17th before going on a drive with the Gaithers and 2 of their friends. While driving on this is describing the accident, which I've already done. This is the prosecuting attorney describing the day before and meeting all of us. On Friday, Murphy said the case was extremely difficult. Her job was to try and have me serve jail time, essentially. Difficult job. While the state is required to hold Lucas accountable and protect the community, the Gaither family had asked for leniency. This is my favorite part of the whole article. So this is the end of the front page, and it says, for more mercy, go to page 8. So we go to page 8. And Johnson has no criminal history or issues with drugs and alcohol and wanted to accept responsibility early on. This is the telling the truth aspect really made a difference. This is a unique situation. And up until Thursday, Murphy said she didn't think a deferred sentence would be appropriate. But prior to Friday's hearing, both Gaither and the Johnson's family met with the attorneys where Jesus was there. But with the Johnsons and had him to sit with the family of the young woman whose life he took. telling them about the night and hearing their memories of the beloved daughter. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, said Murphy, calling the meeting a significant punishment for Johnson and had been something she had never seen before. I think that was very powerful. Johnson's mother, Carrie, said that her son is hardworking. I can skip through that. The end here was really something that was, I guess, kind of funny. In a short statement, the judge, John Brown, Lucas said that this event has completely changed my life. Judge John Brown, while handing down his sentence, said, "The plea agreement is a fair and just under these circumstances. I do not want to see you back in this courtroom," Judge John Brown told Lucas. Lucas said, "You will never see me again." So I was given that 3-year deferred sentence, which meant that if I didn't have any issues with the police or with my terms of my probation, after 3 years I would receive a deferred sentence, which means that was wiped off my record. And from that, I was very grateful because today I don't stand here being a felon. And at the time, it wasn't a big deal, but the Gaithers knew I love hunting and fishing. I love being able to go hunting with guns and all sorts of different things that a felony removes that from. And I'm very grateful for that, and I'm very grateful for all of the different church community that helped me make that possible to complete those 3 years. I have on here 5 different things I'm going to share very briefly about, I don't care who you are, you can't argue that this isn't God, or I'd love to hear you argue with me later, how you don't think that God was involved in this story. Or the first one. If you want to go to the next picture, this is a picture of Morgan Cemetery. And you might think, well, that's unique. I feel like I've heard this name a few times during this testimony. The closest landmark to the accident scene is Morgan Cemetery. It's only a quarter mile from where the accident took place. There is nothing for 15 miles except for this cemetery. And it's a quarter mile from where the accident took place. You might think, that's one thing, oh well. Because of that night, because of the snow, there was a sign that was covered that I didn't see, and we missed the turn. The name of that road that we missed is Morgan Lane, which is about a half mile from where the accident took place. The next one. The closest canyon, so when you're driving up a mountain, there's a bunch of different drainages. The closest canyon to the accident is called Johnson Canyon. The next aspect that seems like it could only be God is back to the church donation I gave of $120. Doesn't seem like much. I put $120 in the offering the 2 days after the accident. So I'm going to share some numbers with you, and for any of you math guys out there, this is going to be really entertaining. Originally, my parents gave our lawyers $25,000. That was just for them to hold as they did the case. They would pull from that. That wasn't going to be enough, but that's what it started with, is kind of what they said, which was great. We were more than happy. They were phenomenal lawyers. So pause that statement. During Bible study, this is like a year later, not quite a year later, I shared with Pastor Mike that I felt convicted that I wasn't tithing or giving anything. And Mike told me, "You have negative money." I don't know why you would be worried about that right now. You don't have any, you owe money. How are you going to tithe to what you don't have? And I thought, that's a good point. But I still felt that I wasn't tithing, I wasn't giving, and part of me wasn't okay with that. That same week, I received a letter from our lawyers stating that they were moved by the case and they would only charge me half what they had decided on, and that they were going to retire after this case, that they wanted to end on this case. They were a married couple, and they decided that they would only charge for 1 hour when they were both working instead of when they would normally charge 2. So I received a refund check of $9,000 from that $25,000 when it was going to be expected that we'd owe more, or that we'd have to pay more. So I received $9,000. I still owed my parents $7,800 from that $25,000. So after I paid $7,800 to my parents of that $9,000, I had what would be the math, $1,200 remaining. I was excited. I thought, man, I don't have negative money anymore. I'm going to tell Mike I can give, I can tithe. So here I am looking at $1,200, and I take 10% out of that. 10% of $120 or $1,200 is $120. So that next Sunday, I was super excited as the basket was passed, and I was able to give $120. And then I looked in my wallet, and I thought, I have 10 times what I started with when I gave the first time. Number 4, the other thing that I thought was a total God thing is the Easter VBS, just 2 weeks ago, of the just judge. And if you see that situation, it was, I won't go into that, but that was a situation where I had to sit in the back, and that day was April 20th, exactly 7 years from my sentencing, was when we did the Easter VBS. And that's a heavy, heavy day for me to be able to look back on. And I got to watch the just judge give a sentence to Max. That was really, really great. The 5th thing is the most exciting aspect to me of this entire testimony, and it's my wife. This is actually really funny. My wife, Rebecca, is the best and has always been the best. As I have explained, I have not always been the best. I was really bad. In college, so growing up in high school, we went to the same youth group, and Rebecca was beautiful. I thought, man, she's amazing. I would love to pursue her, but I was not the person that she wanted to pursue because I was a hypocrite. I was selfish. I wasn't the same person on Wednesday evenings and Wednesday nights as I was on maybe Friday night or Saturday morning, and she knew that because she saw me. So from that, I kind of thought, man, I blew that one. And I didn't think that. I knew that. So come into college in 2014, this was a really funny Bible story. So the reason I went to college is I had a friend, Hayden Emerson, who actually went to, shout out to Hayden if you're watching, and John, I know you're watching. He texted me, and he said he's really bummed. Maybe he could book a flight. He's from Arizona, and he heard the announcement for pickleball, and he was like, dude, I got to make that. So he's hoping to make it next week for pickleball. Shout out to John. So Hayden and I had a men's Bible study with our golf guys, and the topic at hand was, who do you want to marry? Who is the person that you think God has for you, and what are those attributes? Do you want her to be athletic? Do you want her to love the Lord in different ways? Do you want to maybe go into the mission field? All the different things. And we kind of took a minute, as there's 7 or 8 of us, and Hayden and I both kind of laughed. And I think Hayden looked at me, or I looked at him, and he said, the best way to answer this question is, we want to marry a girl just like Rebecca Mackey. And everybody kind of laughed and said, we have no idea who that is. And Hayden and I said, yeah, you don't, but we do, and that's all that matters. And they kind of said, well, describe that. Why would you? And I described all of the amazing things that you know Rebecca is. And the leader of our Bible study said, well, what on earth are you guys doing here? Why are you in California when Rebecca's back in Minnesota? And it's kind of weird. He's talking to both of us. Both of us are like, yeah. And both of us laughed and said, man, that ship has sailed. We screwed that one up so bad. I think we maybe, and we both laughed and thought, and it was so true. And they all kind of said, oh, yeah, good point. You know, you guys were idiots. And then we kind of just moved on with the Bible study. When the accident happened, I had a lot of different people that drew really close to me and were really good prayer warriors. And I had a lot of friends that just showed their colors and kind of went away, which I'm grateful for. One of those people that was an absolute prayer warrior for me was Rebecca Mackey. Quite a few people text me a day or a couple weeks after the accident with encouragement. She was persistent, weekly, sending me Bible verses, just wanting to, hey, do you want to go for a boat ride? You don't have your license, I can come and pick you up and we'll just go get ice cream or hang out. I had none of that. I worked and I went in my room and figured out what the next 10 years in jail was going to look like, trying to highlight every single Bible verse I could to prepare for reality. And Rebecca was a great resource to help me sort of escape that and just be a 23-year-old and just enjoy the different things that we kind of could and take a break from reality. So our relationship went from her being a prayer warrior to things looking a little bit more positive in terms to my future physical state, whether I was not going to be in jail or in jail. And my feelings for Rebecca, which were the entire time, but continued to rise, thinking, man, maybe there's potential. I remember telling Mike, and he's like, dude, like, slow down. You don't even know if you're going to jail. And like, I was like, yeah, but if I don't, and he's like, well, that's the first hurdle, don't go to jail. And I was like, but after, and so that came and went. I didn't go to jail. So I remember come back, and Mike kind of laughed and said, hey, first box checked. And then another like few months went by, and I kind of asked Mike, I was like, do you think there's any chance? And he said, she's still around, and she's kind of done what she needed to do. He's like, go for it. And from that situation, there's a ton more I can share, but it was only a few months after I received my sentencing to not go to jail that we started dating. And then it was a year after that where I proposed to her, and then about a year after that is when we got married, which I'm extremely grateful for. And now we have 2 young kids, most recently just a couple months ago. And the testimony of her relationship with Christ is something that has moved me sort of the most through all of this. She had nothing to gain by helping me. It is only God that shows her outlook on this situation. And in closing, I want to share that. Another picture on there. There isn't another picture, is there? Thank you. In closing, I want to share that you might hear all this and say, man, I wish I had that story. What an amazing testimony to God. What I would say is, I wish I had Rebecca's testimony. I wish that I could say that, man, I was faithful from the time that I was 5 and the time that I knew Christ, that I obeyed and listened, that I didn't need to be smacked by God's rod so hard that there's somebody that's not here with us anymore. And if you're a young person here today, or it doesn't matter how old you are, I hope that can encourage you that you don't need to screw up before you find out God's plan for you. You have everything right here to navigate life. And this is what I learned through the fire. So my final statement, your Bible is the most powerful tool you have. Use it. This is the Bible that I got that Sunday morning after the accident. And I retired it for 2 years, but I took it out of retirement this morning, out of the gun safe, because it is just completely filled with highlighted verses. Well, right there it says, the first day in jail. And the highlighted verses from Julie Swenson that had sent me, or right there it says Kyle Swenson, or the different people. And this has helped me navigate things in a way that I wouldn't be here without it, because this is a personal letter that each one of us received from our Creator, the person that created us, to be able to know why we're here, what are we doing here, and what happens when we die. And I can stand here and not be so saddened by Morgan's loss, because we'll get to meet her again. The Lord had ordained her 22 years on this earth, and that was His plan. And it took me a long time where I can say that openly without feeling like that's selfishness and that it should be me. But I can rest in the fact knowing that He does work all things together for the good of those that love Him. And Morgan loved Him. I'm going to end in prayer, and we're going to have just a short time in the back. I know that I've probably gone over, and I apologize, and I didn't know how long this would take, but I've never been able to share this in its full entirety with all these different letters. I'm really excited to have this recording. But we're going to take a time to be able to have the elders in the back to open up for prayer. Maybe you struggle with alcohol. Maybe you struggle with addiction. Maybe you don't have a relationship with the Lord. This is your chance. Don't wait until you kill somebody to figure it out. I sure wish I wouldn't have. But I'm so glad that Church of Hope was here for me when I did. And we're here for you right now to be able to make that decision. Thank you.